In today's Insight, we look at Mexico, one of the most dangerous countries in the world when it comes to journalists. Press protection organizations say that censorship, threats and attacks on the media have increased in the past year. We go now to John Holman, live in Mexico City, with more on that. John?
Well, in Mexico, over 26,000 people have disappeared in the last 7 years, caused by the violence and impunity seen in this country. One of the sectors of the population that's been most affected is the country's journalists. We followed the case of one missing reporter from the state of Zacatecas. A fledgling reporter 6 months into a job in the state of Zacatecas. 2 weeks ago, wife and mother Zoila Marquez stepped out to return some videos. She hasn't been seen since. Her parents can't understand her disappearance. She left her phone, wallet, husband and 2 children behind.
I feel bad, desperate, tormented, like we aren't living, that this is a nightmare. For me, it's indescribable what a mother goes through in this situation.
Zoila's reporting didn't include high-risk beats such as crime. It's unclear if she's missing for reasons related to her work, but her case has grabbed national attention. Zoila Marquez's disappearance may have shocked people here in the city of Zacatecas, but stories like this one have become sadly familiar in a country which is one of the most dangerous in the world for journalists. She's the latest on a list of more than 20 journalists missing since 2005 and 85 killed since 2000. Zoila's boss told us that in Zacatecas, the government and organized crime control what journalists say through money and intimidation. Is there freedom of expression in Zacatecas?
No. No existe una libertad completa.
There is no freedom of expression. If there's something they don't like, they simply talk to the editor and it isn't published. There is a self-censorship also. Maybe there aren't attacks because we have learned to not expose ourselves. And even though you have the facts, you can't touch certain interests.
The biggest threat to journalists isn't Mexico's violent criminal groups, but government officials, says international press protection organization Article 19.
There are governments that are basically dictatorial, and they're not used to constructive criticism from the press. So it's more common to see attacks against journalists from municipal, state, and federal authorities than from organized crime.
We took those concerns to the Zacatecas state attorney in charge of Zoila's case. He was unexpectedly frank.
De que los periodistas no le tengan confianza tampoco.
Do journalists distrust the authorities? Yes. Journalists, builders, carpenters, priests. Distrust in the authorities is a social phenomenon. It's not just the journalists. It's something that we're ashamed of. For a long time, people have not trusted their police. Lamentably, they're synonymous with corruption and incompetence, and we're trying to change that bad image.
He claims that Zoila wasn't kidnapped, showing me security camera footage of her driving her car alone on the day of her disappearance. But he can't account for her whereabouts in the 2 weeks since.
Everything indicates she took her car, went to another city, and I hope she turns up soon.
Such assurances are common from authorities in Mexico, but they ring a little hollow in a country where nearly 90% of crimes against journalists go unsolved. Well, Article 19, an international press protection group, say that they've documented over 300 cases of physical abuse or threats against journalists this year alone. I'm joined now by Ricardo Gonzalez from their Mexico City office. Ricardo, thanks a lot for joining us. What's been the response of the Mexican government to this?
Well, I mean, impunity is a rule in any single case. What you see is the incompetence, the incapacity of a government that is not willing to actually investigate thoroughly any kind of case. So impunity, it's a rule, and it sends a bad message to everyone.
Isn't there a new attorney's office that's been around for about a year now that's been specifically a mechanism that's to treat journalists and to try and solve these sort of cases.
Yes, but it's not working. We have a general law to protect journalists and human rights offenders, a whole protection policy around that, and none of them are working. Impunity continues to be a problem. Vulnerability for journalists, it's a commonplace for everyone.
And now in individual cases like that of Zoila, is the response of the authorities typically to disregard a journalistic line, or how do they usually respond to these cases?
Of course, the first response is to dismiss any kind of link with the professional activity. They will, spread rumors, as they're doing now with Zoila, which is, I think it's really alarming. So it's common just to dismiss the whole thing. They see it as a public relations problem, not as a justice problem.
And in particular in Mexico, why has Mexico in particular got this problem?
Well, it's a matter of, mixture of, historical facts, such as, the repression coming from, years from the first part of the 21st century. But also there's a lot of problems that are linked with the organized crime, corruption, and how they want to control information as a mean to, control territories and the business of, smuggling drugs and that kind of thing.
So as Ricardo says, a real cocktail here of organised crime, governmental problems here that aren't resolving the issues for journalists in Mexico, and we're still waiting to see cases like that of Zoila Marquez be resolved here. Anand.
Thanks, John. John Holman there reporting from Mexico.